since its expansion in 2003, the Natural Park of Albufera des Grau now encompasses an extensive protected marine area. That runs from the port of Addaia to Punta de Sagalera. This entire area covers approximately 1,700 hectares. The coast's erosive morphology allows calm water zones to exist alongside the choppy zones that are exposed to waves coming from Tramontana and Levante. As a result, the diversity of marine environments and communities is quite high. Among these habitats and marine communities are barrier reefs and underwater meadows of Posidonia oceanica, Cimodosia nudosa and other sea plants, rocky bottoms with Cysticeria algae communities, marine caves, mer and coralligenous seabeds, and submarine sands. Although it has traditionally been called seaweed, the Posidonia is a vascular plant with roots, leaves, flowers and fruits that forms extensive meadows occupying a large part of the Balearic coastline, between 0 and 130 feet deep. This species is endemic to the Mediterranean Sea. The Posidonia fields occupy 40% of the park's seabed. Posidonia, commonly known as Neptune grass, produces large quantities of oxygen, catches atmospheric carbon dioxide, serves as a source of food, as shelter, and as breeding refuge for many organisms, and shelters communities from adverse weather events. On the other hand, 80% of the sand of the Menorcan beaches originates from the shredded limestone structures of organisms that live in the Posidonian meadows. The leaves reach their maximum size during the summer. And with the autumn first storms, the leaves fall off the bushes and are deposited upon the shoreline, serving as protection for the sandbanks and beaches. In calm and clean waters, Posidonia bushes can reach the surface, forming reefs that in Menorca are known as altinas. On rare occasions, these reefs can block the entrances to small coves and bays. These are the Posidonia barrier reefs. These formations indicate that the community has reached its maximum degree of development. The reef is formed by a network of dead rhizomes, Posidonia remains and trapped sediments, upon which the plants of living Posidonia develop. This is the result of centuries and centuries of growth. The Posidonia barrier reefs have practically disappeared from the entire Mediterranean, leaving only isolated remains in some very well-preserved hidden places. Inside this submerged forest, we find an enormous diversity of organisms, from invertebrates such as forams, sponges, spiral tube worms, rhizomes, etc., to wildlife species with more mobility, such as fish, especially Mediterranean rainbow wrasses, painted gambas, and gold lines. One can also find different species of cephalopods, such as cuttlefish. Among the invertebrates, it is worth mentioning the fan mussel, which generally lives hidden in the Posidonian fields and which, with a capacity to reach up to 1 meter in shell length, is the largest bivalve mollusk that exists in the Mediterranean. This species faces a serious risk of extinction. During 2017, the fan mussel suffered a serious epidemic caused by a protozoan parasite of the digestive system that caused almost 100% mortality, drastically reducing its population. Some of the most important threats affecting the Posidonian reefs and fields include the impact of anchors and coastal infrastructure such as marinas, docks or dams. Accordingly, it is necessary to remember that anchoring in Posidonian meadows is a prohibited activity in all Balearic coastline. Furthermore, Posidonia is also very sensitive to wastewater discharges and desalination brines, trawling and sand extractions. The calm waters in sheltered coves and bays fosters the development of other communities of sea plants, such as Imodacia nudosa and Sostren altii. Which differ from the Posidonia by having narrow and shorter leaves. The leaves and rhizomes of these two species form the ideal substrate for a large number of marine organisms to lay eggs. These fields are also habitat for juveniles and fry of many species of fish that find among the leaves the refuge and food necessary to grow and develop into adults. In shallow rocky areas, well lit and beaten by waves, one can see the formation of communities of photophilic algae, or light-loving seaweeds, mainly of Cysticeria genus. All algae of this genus, with the exception of the Cysticeria compressa, are protected due to their ecological importance. They are species that form dense underwater forests, providing habitat, protection, and nourishment for organisms. Often this community colonizes the smooth rocks on the shore, commonly known in Menorca as barbadas. Inside this community of algae, one can find a great diversity of organisms such as sea urchins, sea snails, sea anemones, sponges, rhizomes, starfish, various species of gobbies and blennies. As well as cuttlefish or octopi that find some of their prey within this habitat. This community is also found in numerous rock reefs. These reefs display a much greater diversity of fish because they attract more pelagic species such as the greater amberjack, European barracudas, or saddled breams. These coexist with other fish more dependent on the seabed, such as the common two-branded sea breams. White sea breams, combers, damselfishes, or green, brown, or ornate brasses. The rocky bottoms, dominated by large blocks and fissures, contain many holes and tunnels that various fish species, such as the dusky grouper, the brown miga, or the white sea bream uses shelter from predators, but also various species of lower gastronomic value, such as the marbled moray. To safeguard these valuable species, underwater fishing is regulated in the natural park. One must have a special authorization, and this allows fishing some days per week. Starting at approximately 100 feet deep, light begins to dissipate, and the species that we find here must be able to survive under these conditions. Here, we see a community dominated by calcareous red algae, often accompanied by some species of colonial animals such as gorgonians or corals. These communities are commonly known as merle or co-religionous. Given their slow growth, the systematic looting suffered, climate change, and the impact of invasive species, these communities are extremely fragile and vulnerable, and therefore protected. In the islets area in Addaia, there are numerous marine caves that have been colonized by many of the species belonging to the deep zones, and which we often find in the coralligenous beds. At the entrance to these caves, we can find algae that need some light but cannot handle direct sunlight, such as those of the Posidonia and Lithophilum genus. There is also diverse fauna consisting mainly of sponges, cnidarians, polychids, moss animals, etc. Among this fish, it is worth mentioning the presence of the cardinal fish and sometimes of the red scorpion fish. One finds very few plants and animal species on the uniform surfaces of the sandy seabeds. Their elements are in continuous movement due to waves and currents, so they don't allow the formation of stable structures. But they do accommodate the existence of organisms capable of burying themselves. The predominant algae here are unicellular, basically diatoms. Only a small part of the fauna is visible, since most organisms live hidden or camouflaged in the sediment. The wide-eyed flounder, the lizard fish, the pearly racerfish, the red mullet, and the strict gurnard are, all of them, clear examples of organisms that follow this survival strategy. At this Albufera this Grau Natural Park, core of the Biosfera Reserve, main marine communities of the whole island are represented. All these communities are related to each other and have a high environmental value. Therefore, we must keep on ensuring its conservation.